Hello, everyone. My name is Nils Stern, and I am the director of OAPEN and co-director of DOAB, the Directory of Open Access Books. And together with Eva, I will be moderating this session 2, in which we have shared divided work like the previous moderators. This time I'm the good cop, and Eva will be the tough cop. So I'm pleased for that. Thank you, Eva. And I'm also very pleased to be moderating this particular session because it's what I have been striving to do for the last 20 years, namely raising efficiency in scholarly communication and to make scholarly communication more effective. I don't know if I've been successful, but I keep on trying every day. So we have a very interesting panel today with 4 talks, and after that there will be a Q&A session here. I'm aware that we are slightly starting slightly late according to the plan, but we will let each speaker have their time, so don't worry. And to get us started, I'm really happy to introduce Juan Pablo Alperin, all the way from Canada, from Simon Fraser University, where he works for the People Knowledge Project, PKP, at Simon Fraser University. So Pablo, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me just load up my presentation here. Just share the screen first. Okay. Okay, great. So thank you. It's good to be here. First time in Croatia and first time at PubMet, and so it's really nice to have a chance to be here. Those of you that know me know that I sort of wear 3 different hats in the scholarly communication world. So one of them is an associate professor at Simon Fraser University. Another one is the co-scientific director of the Public Knowledge Project, and the third one is the co-director of a research group examining scholarly communications and the Scholarly Communications Lab. So I always have to think, depending on what talk I'm giving and exactly how I decided to focus it, which slide deck, which template that I use. And so I think today's talk will be a little bit more from my role as the co-scientific director of the Public Knowledge Project, in particular, because I will be thinking around efficiencies and the role of open source software. So this naturally falls within the ambit of what PKP does. Of course, there's many different kinds of efficiencies when we think about what are the places where we could try to gain efficiencies in the scholarly communication realm. And I can't try to talk about all of them, but just to name a few, there's some of the questions that were raised already this morning around research waste, the fact we didn't really talk about, but the fact that we don't tend to encourage publishing of negative results, which leads to people kind of really replicating the same studies and finding the same negative results over and over again, and that kind of waste. There's also a lot of work that gets redone because the resources weren't shared, so people made those openly available. Other people could focus their time on building on top of that work instead of regenerating those resources again. There's slowness around how long it takes to do things like peer review and how much that delays sharing of research findings. There is all kinds of sort of replicated efforts where people are kind of doing the same work multiple times instead of trying to collaborate and work together, because there's an environment in which we're encouraging competition with one another instead of encouraging collaboration, the incentives that are in place for doing that. There's also a lot of wasted effort in scholarly communications world in having us justify what it is that we're doing or why we should do it or why we should have money or resources to do it, instead of time that gets spent on actually just doing the things. And there's so much of the system that's built around making us sort of justify our work and justify what we've done instead of focusing our time and energies and resources into actually doing the things that we already know are valuable and we already feel motivated and encouraged to keep doing. So there's all of those kinds of efficiencies, but I can't, like I said, in the time that I've got allotted, talk about the ways in which we could try to make the system as a whole more efficient. But I will sort of focus on 2 different aspects of those things. One is around, and I'm going to use the Public Knowledge Project and the work that we do with open journal systems as an example. But I promise this isn't, even though at some point you might feel like I'm just giving you a pitch for PKP and open journal systems, I promise there is a larger point that I'm trying to make, and I'm just going to use the work that we do at PKP as that example. And so forgive me if it starts coming across as a pitch for PKP and OJS. I really just want to kind of use that as an example point. And I'm going to use that to also talk a little bit about some of the other opportunities that there are for collaboration using both open source tools and the opportunities for using sort of open standards. And I'll just kind of walk through 3 different areas in which I think we could continue to improve the system as a whole through the use of these resources. So here's the part where, again, it will sound like I'm just kind of pitching you on PKP and OJS, but I want to share, we actually just shared this preprint earlier this week. If you find my Twitter, you can find, it's a pinned tweet, and you can find the link to it if you don't want to copy that out right now, where we sort of published looking at a data set of the number of journals that are out there using open journal systems. Actually, this number is a couple years old. We actually think there's over 30,000 active journals publishing with OJS. They're spread out across almost 10,000 installations around the world. And in 2020 alone, they published almost 1 million articles, or a million documents, I guess, because we haven't really looked in. So it's a significant number of journals that are out there. But speaking a little bit to getting an understanding of where these journals are, because this is a huge volume of publications that are out there in the world. And if you can see sort of where they're published, you see that there is you can see if I can try to move this little bar so it's not covering at the top. Maybe this is a better place to put it. Yeah, so that's fine. So you can see that, I mean, about half of them are in Asia, and mostly actually in Indonesia is around. There's a huge number of open journals using open journal systems in Indonesia. So we're, I think, around 12,000 or so journals in that region. It's been a huge boom there. But also in Latin America, with Brazil leading the way there in terms of publications using OJS, and then obviously in the rest of the world. So they're kind of spread around the world, but not in the typical sort of Northern European, North America centers of publishing. I got it. I'm good. I wanted to talk to the question that Pierre was raising this morning around the different kinds of thank you. Just make sure. These questions around bibliodiversity and the kinds of differences that we have in these journals. I just want to point out that the journals that are publishing using OJS, yes, there is about half of them that are publishing using English, but we also see, like I mentioned, Indonesia being a huge volume of the publication, but also Spanish, Portuguese, and then we have sort of other languages. This just kind of drops off with the list actually of the number of languages found in OJS goes on and on. This is just sort of the top 10 languages that we find. But also not just in that there's a diversity of languages, we actually also see that many of these journals are actually publishing in more than one language at a time. So about half of them publish in one single language, but then you have another, the other sort of 50%, or a little bit over 50% are publishing in 2 languages simultaneously within the same journal, or in 3 or more languages within the same journal. So again, we're going to see this linguistic diversity that exists in these publications. The question, I think actually I may be misputting it on the slide here, but around looking at these are journals are largely not indexed in some of the large commercial indexes. So we find the place where you can find them is in Google Scholar. You can find the majority of the journals using OJS. But if you look at Web of Science and Scopus, even actually the Dimensions database, although it tries to be more inclusive, only has about half of the journals using OJS and not the other. So these are, I want to say is like the point of using this again is not just to show sort of the extent and the breadth of what PKP does, although I do think it's a nice opportunity for me to be able to highlight that. It's to make the point that there are thousands sort of a small, independent, and distributed journals. These are not journals that are centralized by one publisher or one location. So they're out there sort of in the world and in being run in these sort of independent ways, largely through universities or other scholar-led initiatives with installations that have about 2.5 journals on each installation. Right? So they're out there out in the world. And OJS brings, and this I'm again just going to point out a couple of the features of OJS that helps bring this efficiency, because what I want to point out here is how having a shared platform for all of these journals that are being operated and distributed in distributed way, allows us to still be able to see them as a whole, to work with them and to be able to discover them. So we have some efficiencies that we get in the discovery of these distributed systems without necessarily needing to centralize them. We do that through things like being able to organize the metadata of these journals in standard ways. So we use, in this case, like I'm just showing the XML that sort of the HTML that gets put, the meta tags that show you the Dublin core standard, but also the indexing that happens with the meta tags that we put specifically so that Google Scholar can index them properly. Another thing that OJS does is around having the open APIs with the OAI PMH standard. So that makes that available so they can be harvested elsewhere. So it's that organizing of that metadata that gets done, again, using these open standards and with the open source tool that allows us having this very distributed, large, diverse group of journals out in the world, still all able to be discovered, even if they are not indexed by one central indexing service, right? Or by just one single player. It allows us actually to have the metadata be ingested into every other kind of system, including into things like Google Scholar, because, or even standard search engines, because of the fact that we help organize this metadata. Oh, right, this is, I knew I had put that in there somewhere. So it's again, just to show you just like where OJS journals are indexed, they're not indexed everywhere. And so, and so what we do is organizing this metadata so that places like Google Scholar can find it. I think I already made that point, so I'll move on. Other place where we get efficiencies, that we get some efficiencies around the fact that there are all of these journals, even though they're all operating independently and there isn't one central publisher that's doing them, they all have sort of some common interface. It's actually this big difference that we implemented in OJS 3.0, where even if journals customize how they look on the front end, the back end sort of essentially looks the same for all journals. This creates some familiarity that authors have when they submit to these journals, so that there is this sort of organized, like sort of standard workflow that they're going through. They're not needing to learn a new system for every single journal that they submit to. Again, the journals remain distributed around the world, but yet there's some common elements that they're able to use, so that no matter what sort of policies they have, they still have sort of a common interfaces that allow authors to be able to benefit from this shared, these shared interfaces that make things a little bit more efficient and effective for an author not to have to learn a new system. And those of you that publish a lot of papers, you know that most of these systems are always have they all have their quirks and they all have their things that you need to be able to do. And over time, you start sort of learning, okay, I know this is that submission system, and you know exactly how to go through that process, and you're not having to relearn those interfaces again. So again, something else that OJS helps us to do. And then again, another piece is around the creating internal efficiencies in how the journals operate. So the organizing of the workflow. Helping to organize the workflow makes it so there's a little bit less waste around all of the inefficiencies that come with trying to organize, let's say, a peer review process, right? Around all of the email exchanges that need to happen. So the system obviously creates these sort of standard communications. It sort of helps to keep all of the workflow all in one place. It allows multiple people to participate in that workflow, the editorial workflow process. And again, something that having a shared platform allows all of those journals to have, again, without them needing to relinquish their independence. They're still able to run it and operate it themselves, but having a common platform allows that process and to work more efficiently. And then the final piece, and then this is where I end sort of the OJS advert, is around efficiencies around how it facilitates the integrations with the rest of the system, the scholarly communication system. There's actually a sort of a nice piece in Nature the other day around like the use of DOIs, the sharing of open citations, and sharing of open abstracts, the participation of journals into the larger ecosystem of integration, and how the way that having a shared open platform that implements and is sort of very much rooted in open standards allows these journals, again, although they're operating everywhere around the world, to be able to tap into these the larger sort of scholarly ecosystem and participate in making sure that those publications can form part of the official sort of scholarly record. And I put that sort of in scare quotes because one of the things that I think using platforms like OJS and these 25,000, 30,000 journals operating around the world is that they are contributing scholarship from wherever in the world and whatever languages from across all of the disciplines. And everything there deserves to be part. It is all part of the knowledge that we've accumulated, and it all deserves to be part of either the scholarly record that whether other people would consider it or not part of some central canon of knowledge. These are actually all journals that we want to have as part of our ecosystem. And having a platform that implements these open standards allows them to be integrated in those formal ways that we've agreed on as a community. And so there's two main messages from this part, right? The first is just conveying that message that there is a whole world of journals out there that number in the tens of thousands, and these are just the journals using OJS. There's actually, these are, I'm not saying these are the only journals that are outside of that central canon of databases. There's actually tens of thousands others maybe that we don't really even know very much about because they're not all organized in some central way, but they're out there. They're distributed across sort of universities and across institutes and across even independent scholars and other non-academic institutions. So we've seen high schools that create journals for their students. We've seen museums that have their own publications, right? There's other kinds of institutions that are not your standard universities that are publishing things that look like journals or that look like we can consider to be scholarly publications, and they're out there. They're very diverse in how they look and they're distributed. Having a shared platform and having shared platforms that sort of that these journals can make use of can allow those qualities of them being diverse and distributed to remain in place, which I think is something that we want as a way of encouraging that bibliodiversity without necessarily needing to centralize the services or bringing them all under being run by one single institution or publisher. And so I think we can make better use of open source tools like OJS, but like other open source initiatives that are available to make sure that all of these journals are able to themselves make use of the technologies that let them gain the kind of author efficiencies, the efficiencies in their workflows, all of those efficiencies I was just pointing to, without sacrificing the diverse and distributed nature of those publications. So like I said, it's not just OJS, right? These same types of journals are out there in the world, need other kinds of supports as well. And there are other open source solutions that are also out there, not just for, OJS is just good at that journal management and production, but there's other elements and other aspects of the scholarly communication practice that also need to be supported with those same principles in mind. I'll point to one is around the need for being able to have XML production tools. And I want to point out, these are actually sort of two, I would say they're stalled efforts, or one of them maybe we consider one failed and one stalled effort to be able to produce an editor for producing XML and creating that part of making sure that the documents themselves can be integrated into the scholarly system by the efficiencies that come from single source production, having XML being able to be used as the source for creating HTML and PDF. We want these kind of efficiencies that we have that come with XML, but without the technologies to support them so that the journals are able to themselves produce this work or in some way be in control of that production process, we're not going to have them. Substance was a company that was developing an editor that was called Texture, that for a while PKP and others and eLife and Cielo and the Coco Foundation and others were all trying to support its development, but it didn't really manage to gain the large community support. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the inefficiencies that come with this distributed model. But the need for a technology that helps with the XML production is just another place where I think we can borrow on that same idea that having open tools that can be put into the hands of people producing scholarly works can help us to gain those efficiencies. The Libero editor is sort of where that Texture editor ended up transforming as eLife took it over. But then eLife decided that they didn't want to be in charge of trying to produce an XML editor, and now it's formally in the hands of the Coco Foundation as the stewards of that project, but really there is no development happening. I'll talk a little bit about that in my last few minutes. But again, it's a place where we can make use of this kind of thing. Another example, which is on open standards, there's a nice idea that we've all kind of thought, wouldn't it be so great if I submit my publication to one journal, but it gets rejected, if I could just send it to a different journal without having to go through all of those steps of filling out all of the forms that I've already filled out with all of that metadata and all of the preparing of the manuscript. If I could just send that through with one click to somewhere else. The technology exists. In fact, NISO has put forward a standard. This is something that was worked on, sort of a community-led effort. And again, I'm going to put that in scare quotes because of saying like who are the folks that are participating. There's a standard that's in place. This one is a little bit stalled, not because the standard is there and it's kind of in practice, but the large commercial publishers that could make use of this don't really have necessarily the will to implement APIs so that open tools like Open Journal Systems could actually make use of it. They're actually trying to, they've created a whole standard and a package and a format. It works through FTP. I don't know if you remember what FTP is. It's a technology that existed before the web. And that's the standard that they are choosing to use. And it's not that nobody's against it. When you go to the calls, we have someone from our team present in these calls. Nobody's opposed to the idea of the API, but also the community that's there doesn't really necessarily have the will to say, how do let's make sure, let's implement so this can be done in a more modern way. So a tool can we can actually create some URLs and transfer the documents through APIs. And again, the willingness to put this in place is not necessarily there, but it's another area where there's a standard in place. There's an opportunity where the tools, the open standards and the open tools could create that efficiency and make this idea, which is so basic and has been around for forever, a reality. Everything that needs to make this happen exists, except for the will to actually say, we're going to implement it across all journals. And this last example is a little bit different. I'm putting preprints here, which as an example of a different kind of inefficiency, right? It's inefficiency around how long it takes. I have one manuscript that now has been under review for 8 months. And I had one publication 2 years ago that was like, it sat in review for 15 months, only to then get a desk, and it was that, yeah, and then we get a rejection and then have to start the process all over again, right? There's that kind of inefficiencies. Preprints are helping to mean that we can have all of that stuff. It was sitting for 15 months. The one I have now for 8 months, well, whatever. I've already shared it. I like the efficiency of getting that stuff out. But that preprint ecosystem right now is being largely maintained by open source tools. Most of the preprint servers are out there are running at least in name on open source. But there's I think we need to make sure that if we're going to rely on open source tool for things like preprints, we actually need to be really productive so that we take advantage and get the same kind of benefits that we're seeing from the use of a tool like OJS in terms of, because just the fact that it's relying on open source tools today doesn't mean that it's going to end up allowing the preprint servers to continue to have sort of controlled and have that distributed nature of how those preprint servers are operating. We need to be really proactive about making sure that those don't end up essentially then getting consolidated and run by sort of one large commercial publisher or even just one large publisher of preprints that sort of starts sort of gobbling these up. And that's where we get to the other challenge around consolidation, right? We could start seeing this in the preprint space as well, if we're not proactive about saying we want to stand behind these kinds of principles. So I'll finish sort of by saying that the centralization of publishing and services is not the only path to efficiency. This is a message I'm probably going to echo when we talk at the Diamond No Way conference next week as well, right? That there is some value in centralizing some activities, but that we need to be careful that we do that in a way that doesn't squash the diversity that exists out there in the space today. And to recognize that the value that open standards and open tools can provide, but also recognize that there is an inefficiency, sort of ironically, that you gain those efficiencies, but there's an inefficiency in how we coordinate those efforts, right? How do we coordinate the funding and the resources to make sure that distributed efforts, distributed publishing efforts are out there, can actually all take advantage. And so there's a tension there that exists around the efficiencies we gain by adopting open tools and open standards and the inefficiencies and the challenge. And I think the example I gave around XML is a perfect case where the coordination effort was so great that it didn't end up succeeding. And so then we don't get those, the benefits that could come along with it. So I just sort of leave you, I think, with this last message, just to think about efficiencies as being able to happen in more ways than one. That the tools, there's a lot of tools that exist out there, but as a community, I think we need to take on an active role in saying, let's make the investments in the coordinating of those efforts so that we get the efficiencies at all of those distributed at those tens of thousands of points where people are trying to participate in publishing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juan, for this very interesting talk. And we'll now proceed with 4 shorter talks, of which the first is about the Spanish National Plan for of Science and Innovation and research into advantages and disadvantages for scholars. This will be presented by Patricia Alonso-Álvarez from, yes, please, from Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. And yes, Patricia, please, the floor is yours. Change this.
Hi, well, my name is Patricia, and I would like to introduce you to this specific presentation, which is part of an ongoing project that we are evaluating the Spanish National Plan, and it's a project on open science and how open science initiatives are have effects on the Spanish National Plan. So I'm here with my colleagues Pablo Sastron-Toledo, and then we have our co-authors Jorge Mañanal and Elias Sant, and I would like to thank them and all of you for being here. So this work is supported under this project by the Ministry of Science and Innovation in Spain. And first of all, I would like to introduce you to a bit of the background of Spanish legislation and recommendations in open access. So here we do have some of the things that happened in the last decade. So first of all, it was Recolecta. It was this open access portal that agglutinates all repositories of open access in Spain. And then we have our main regulation, that is the Science, Technology and Innovation Law. And then we have a lot of recommendation and initiative for other foundations and conference of Spanish rectors and all other national institutions. And now in 2002, we have the new Science and Technology and Innovation Law that was just approved last week. So our Science and Technology and Innovation Law sets a mandate that all research that is publicly funded has to be published in open access. But the thing is that all the exceptions that go there made it more like a choice than a mandate. So we want to evaluate if this mandate is being fulfilled by the researchers, and also how publishing in open access affects the researchers that do publish in a way. So first research question will be, do Spanish researchers comply with the Spanish National Open Science mandate? And then second one, in terms of publication impact, that we measure up the number of citations and being published in the first quartile. Is this beneficial or it has disadvantage for Spanish researchers? So we got some data from the resolutions of the Spanish National Plan, and then we retrieved all the publications associated with them using the grant field on the Web of Science, and then we got all the information on open access from the Web of Science downloads. So finally, we got almost 20,000 projects and more than 105,000 publications. So we use some descriptive statistics to analyze the evolution of publications in open access, and then we use also some descriptive statistics to analyze the evolution of publications in open access by area and by institution. For the second part, about the impact of open access in the effects of open access in the impact of publications, we use some statistical tests as Mann-Whitney and then some regression analysis. Okay, so first of all, here we do have the percentage of papers published in open access that is growing during the last years. So we are almost 70%, but also, which is like we have a lot of room for improvement, right? We do have differences by area, as we were commenting before in the first session, and here we do have the life science and biomedicine are the highest ones, and then we do have physical science with also almost 70% of publications in open access, and also technology is one of the highest ones. Then we have social sciences, which is below 50%, and then we also have arts and humanities, that is quite low. Well, we have here this 100%, and this is because there is just one publication and it is in open science. So just wanted to point that out. Here we do have publications by institutions, and we see that Spanish National Research Council and regional R&D centers do have more than 70% of publications in open access, while universities and other private bodies are way below. Statistical results that we do want to know the effect of publishing in open access. We see that it does has an impact on citation counts, all citation counts that we report from Web of Science. So significant effects. So open access has a positive effect on citation counts. So we don't want to use a lot of numbers here, but the main idea is that we see that using a lot of controls, that's research area, publication year, number of authors being in the first quartile, international collaboration, and some article measures that are like the length of the article, the reference count, and other things like title length or abstract length. Publishing in open access is still significant and has a positive effect. Problem comes when we go to being published in the first quartile, that once we add controls, we see that publishing in open access does have a negative impact on the first quartile. So we have two things, that we are kind of fulfilling the Spanish mandate, but some areas are doing it better than others, and then we have that it does have a beneficial effect on researchers in terms of citation account, but it has a negative effect in publishing in the first quartile. This is also important because in Spain, being published in the first quartile is like one requirement for the accreditation of the Spanish national body for accreditation of researchers and professors. So we have these limitations that we do have one country that is just Spain. I think that we will benefit to compare with other countries. I know Pierre mentioned before like the Italian open science scheme, that maybe be interesting to do some comparison with the regions of the south of Spain. And we are just using one funding scheme that is the most well-known and most important in Spain, but maybe we will use some regional and other funding schemes just for comparison. And as we are using this Web of Science merging with the grant number and then how the authors report the funding, we may be missing some of the publications. Also, that I think is interesting, we want to do some next steps. So we are analyzing the open access types and also the institutional effects that I think they are interesting to take into account, right? So we see that there are huge difference between open access types, and gold OA is actually growing a lot, but it has negative effects on being in the first quartile. So we have a lot of gold journals that are below the first quartile, which is negative for researchers to publish there. And then institutions to actually play a really significant role here, and we would like to study a bit the policies and the mandates behind the institutions to see if we can make some recommendations on how to increase open access. So I would like to end with the starting discussion. So this is how can we address the publishing in open access with these negative effects in terms of impact and being the first quartile, which is also not being able to grow as researcher, like in accreditation or in national terms, and also that we may also not focus just on individual researchers, that we are important and we have a role to play, but also in institutional policies and also at international and national levels. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And for the next talk, we will get an example of how to raise efficiency and effectiveness in scholarly communication from Gdańsk University of Technology, where Magdalena Szuflita-Żurawska, thank you, who is the head of scientific and technological information section at the Gdańsk University of Technology Library, will share with us this example. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. It is my first time in Croatia. Which one? This one. And which? Yes, thank you. So today, on behalf of my colleague, Anna, library director, I would like to show you how we try to raise efficiency and effectiveness in scholarly communication activities at our university by using and developing the Bridge of Knowledge platform. So many thoughts after a few presentations today, and I don't really want to explain the definition of scholarly communication activities and practices, because probably everybody of you, they have their own approach to this. However, I would like to highlight the importance that scholarly communication is changing, is in transition, and is changing all the time. So, for example, we have to adjust our activities, our services to the time of publish or perish. We also need to adjust our activities in the terms of culture of speed. You know, from the point of researchers, now publishing in open access or traditional publishing, researchers, they always want to publish fast and efficiency, of course. And scholarly communication activities is also a part of scientific excellence. So at our university, we try to put everything together. And everything was started in 2016, that the first part of our project started to be established. So the multidisciplinary open system transferring knowledge, the acronym of its name in Polish language is MOST Wiedzy. In English, it means the bridge of knowledge. And the first part was focused on mostly was focused on open access, but also on introducing different activities like project support, laboratory and equipment registering, and so on. The second part, it started in 2018, and this is my favorite, and it focused on open research data. The most important thing when we started our project is that in the same time when we provide the infrastructure to the researchers and to the academic community, we started to build our support service. And it comes that now we have Open Science Competency Center. And I'm very proud to be the leader of the team. So here you can see our portal, and that's the newest version, but it's still in the development, and we have more to show you. I hope we will have more to show you next few years. So what you can see from here that we try to provide researchers with the place where they can find all the information. So, for example, if they would like to use the repositories on the right side, you can see that we have repository of publication, we have open access publication repository, and also open research data repository. In terms, for example, of the scientific evaluation, we provide researchers in the information of our Polish ministry list and points of journals, publishing houses, and conferences. We also connected here the virtual microscope and information about learning courses and events, and as I said, information about equipments. So in terms of Open Science Competency Center, we offer support and training to all parts of that infrastructure. So for example, our trainings and our support contains creation, publication, dissemination, bibliometrics, and discovery of academic research. We provide cross-checking requirements of Plan S, publishers, and grant funders policy. We also try to introduce the idea of data management plans. So we evaluate and we teach how to write the good and efficiency data management plan. We also support and provide trainings on information skills for students and for PhD students, how to use databases, how to use open access resources, and so on. We try, and it's in the middle, we try to build the legal knowledge hub, and that's I think it's very nice idea, that we try to bring together all different and sharing practices in terms of open research data from the legal point of view. We establish a Polish working group where we meet once per month, and we are talking about the different aspects of open science, which means we try to popularize open science ideas among our Polish national community. From the researcher point of view, our service or our platform also offer the website for researchers. It's something like, it's not exactly like a CV, but it's very similar to the personal website. So here is my colleague Kuba. I'm not sure if you can see, but on the left side, you can connect different services to your profile. So researcher very easily can connect, for example, Google Scholar, ResearchGate, ORCID, Mendeley, Scopus, Research ID from the Web of Science to its profile. This profile is available in two languages, in Polish and in English. For a student's point of view, here you can find all the information about teaching and about e-learning courses which researchers can teach at our university. On the, I think, yes, in the middle you can see 5 minutes, okay. In the also you can see all information about publications. You can connect information about project you are part of, or you are maybe project investigator. And of course, you can connect open research data in terms of data sets. Why we do this? It reminds me about the conversation I had with my colleagues, researchers, that it's so many different services, so many different platforms, so many different databases on one hand, and on the other hand, it's so many different regulations which they are changing all the time. Sometimes researchers, they are not able to cope with all those legal requirements. Rights retention, Vanessa. If we try to explain what they can, it's just, and my colleague, she said me, Magda, I just wanted to do science. So that was their idea, to put everything in one place. Not everything, maybe not everything, and I didn't show you on this on this slide, but we also use open journal system, and we already put 3 hour journals into that, and we adjust online journal system to our infrastructure, so it will be soon available on the platform as well. So and yes, and the idea was to put everything in one place to make researchers a little bit easier to find all the information. And on the other hand, what is the most important, in one hand we give them infrastructure, and on the other hand we give them support, this Open Science Competency Center. So a few advantages from our point of view, that we developed this infrastructure based on our software, and this gives us a many flexibility when we want to change something. Our team reacts dynamically to changes in scholarly communications, for example, Plan S, and then we, in cooperation with IT team, of course, we could introduce in our platform and in our system new features. For example, now we can provide DOI for authors accepted manuscript. And excellent cooperation, excellent collaboration with different stakeholders from our university, especially IT, but also people from projects, not really with the legal office, but I hope it will come in the future. So more to go. Exactly what I said, Knowledge Legal Hub, and also we will try to introduce our data management plan databases soon. So thank you very much for your attention, and we will be very happy with Anna to answer all your questions. And one more thing, the Bridge of Knowledge portal from point of researchers, if you'd like to if you would like to set up your profiles, is free to use, and we are open for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. And I think collecting a lot of information in one single access point is also the topic for the next talk, which is Sona Arasteh, who will talk about the GoTriple project and the GoTriple platform, which is about collecting, giving access through a single platform for the social sciences and humanities.
Perfect. Give it the talk.
I mean, I love the project.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thanks for having me / listening to me right now. Thanks for the kind introduction. As Niels rightly mentioned, my name is Sona Arasteh. I'm working at the Max Weber Foundation as a communication officer. In this very capacity, I'm also working for the GoTriple project. So if this presentation at any point feels like shameless advertisement to you, it's probably because it's right. For starters, I will give you a few general information about the project so you have some context. So GoTriple, as you can easily imagine, is an acronym for Transforming Research Through Innovative Practices and Linked Exploration. Easy, as I said. The project has been started in 2019 and will run out of funding by March of next year. It is funded under the EU Horizon program and is developing one of the Opera's dedicated services, which I think one of them Niels will present tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, please join his talk tomorrow and listen closely now. Sorry. Okay, so as Niels has also mentioned, at the heart of the project, it's developing a platform that is called GoTriple, and that is dedicated to making discovery and collaboration easier for social sciences and humanities. And it's especially designed to help social sciences and humanities researchers to do so, because as you can all imagine, the disciplines are pretty much scattered along the lines of languages, which is why GoTriple is also keen on promoting multilingualism. We will get to that in a bit. Just to give you, okay, this doesn't work. Can I just? Okay, so just to give you an impression of how much of a huge international effort this project is, I've put down all of our, okay, that's a bit too, okay, thanks. I've put all of our consortium partners on one slide. I will not name all of them because that would take up too much time, but just so you know, we're pretty much present in more than 15 countries and have more than 20 partners working on this project. So going back to the platform we're developing at the moment, in which I implore you to try out as much as you can. This is the address for it. So as I already said, it is decidedly multilingual, which means it covers or will cover by the end of it 11 languages. At the moment it's 10. It features 5 innovative services, which I will talk about in a bit. And as I already said, it is dedicated to the social sciences and humanities community and the vision of open science. And I'm afraid you cannot read that, right? Okay, just see, it's still a nice visual aid. Okay, so if you were to go on the website, this would be your starting point, and you could enter pretty much any term you want any information on. And if you were to enter any term, I don't know, for example, Boccaccio, you would see search results indexing indexing results in 10 languages for that very word. So that's pretty much the multilingual discovery aspect of it. I'm sorry. And now I'm going to talk a bit about the innovative services. Since I only have 10 minutes, it will be a bit of a tour de force through them. But again, please feel free to try all of them out for yourself. So the innovative services feature visualization tools, a recommender system, an open annotation tool, a trust building system, which is pretty much a social network, and a crowdfunding service. So let's start with the visualizations. So we have basically 2 tools to make visualizations for your search query possible. One would be the knowledge map, which you can see over here. So that gives you basically a topical overview of your search query based on the 100 most relevant results for your search query. And the second would be the stream graph, which displays the evolution of, so this would be time, and which would display the evolution of the term you entered connected to keywords. You can click on each of these. I didn't feature this in this presentation because I didn't quite know how it would translate online. So again, please feel free to try it out for yourself. It's very handy, and both of these tools are obviously designed to give you some kind of initial contextualization for your work. So you have some kind of orientation and can put it in context. The second innovative service is the recommender system, which is designed to kind of broaden the view you have on your research. So it basically recommends publications, projects, and researchers' profiles, because yes, you can sign up to our platform as well, that are closely related to your search queries, your own profile, or the project you've been involved with. So let's have a look at the third one, the open annotation tool, Pundit. Pundit is basically a browser extension. You could use it with GoTriple or without, but in GoTriple it is implemented already. So that means if you have this browser extension installed and you click on a search result within your list of search results, basically you will have these two buttons. And you can either view document page, which will basically just forward you to the document you want to read, or you can click on annotate document page, and then Pundit, if you have installed it, will automatically open, and you will be able, you will be able to comment, tag, or semantically annotate also to highlight the text online. Of course, this is not all. You can also I'm sorry, I forgot the term in English. You can save. you can save your annotations in the cloud, which means it's basically easily accessible from each and every location. And by the end of the year, you will also be able to share your annotations and your notebooks, your online notebooks, with other people. The third innovative service is the fourth innovative service is the social network, the trust building system that is implemented into the page. It is in so far different from the signing up onto the web page itself, because it is not only designed to connect researchers and facilitate collaboration among them, but to connect various stakeholders that are interested in research and science. So you would have policymakers, editors, journalists, researchers alike in this network would be able to collaborate with them via this network. The last innovative service is the crowdfunding service that was launched in 2022. It is designed to increase social sciences and humanities impact and outreach by citizen funding and initiate cascade funding for social sciences and humanities research. Obviously, you probably won't get a few million out of crowdfunding. I implore you to try, please prove me wrong. But it has been, my experience, it is a nice way to especially gain funding for projects that are a bit different or in an early stadium of research. So that worked quite nice. I brought one example with me, which is accidentally a project that was led by Pierre. So it was supporting Ukrainian editors. It has run its course by now, and actually, I know this one says roughly 9,000 euro, but it actually made more than 20,000, if I'm correct, right? Okay, very much more than 20,000, so more than 70,000 euros. So it was quite successful. This is not an innovative service per se, but this is actually the possibility to sign up on the platform itself, which is pretty much a newborn because it was implemented into the website yesterday. So again, please try it out, sign up and see all the features. I will briefly show them to you. So as you can see, you can basically pin content, you can have a network, you can put information about your own profile there, so your research interests, you can put information up there if you can put information if you're available for collaboration, etc., etc. Then you have several collaboration opportunities. You can look for people that are open to collaboration via searching for specific research interests or location. And you can follow users. Okay. So my point being with all of this and rushing through these innovative services and the platform itself is please try it out. And I can just as a very last point of this presentation, I would like to emphasize that of course we love critique. So in case you try out this website and for example, you find a bug or anything, please report this. We have a little button in the right corner that is well a bug. And you can click on it and report it. And if you have any other feedback, please get in touch. There's my email address. You can also just come to me and talk to me. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sona. We'll now have time for Q&A. So if the speakers could come up here, please. So we actually have 15 minutes for Q&A, and then it's lunch. So, okay, and we have one question, which I thought was Vanessa, but it's not. So, please go ahead.
So this is the Juan Pablo. First of all, I would like to say that I'm coming from the Federation of Student Societies. We do have this is open journal systems based platform, and we are very pleased with that. So, I may have a question in the answer with the success. I began to wonder how do you collect the information relating to this installed open journal system, for example, about the languages and such.
So for a long time, we didn't have a very good mechanism for trying to understand it. It's actually part of the philosophy behind PPP and following very much of an open source philosophy of letting really people do whatever they want on the platform and not asking for absolutely anything in return. Some years ago, we implemented something in Node.js, we call it the beacon, that essentially ends up alerting us about the existence of a platform. All that does is send us a link and an ID for the installation, and a link to the OAI interface. And so that's something that we use that feature to be able to create. There's something inside of this that lets you know when the new version is available. So there's something, a benefit there for use. All we get is just the existence of the platform, and then what we use is the OAI interface, which is all publicly available metadata. And we have this documented and actually in that preprint that I think at the beginning of my talk. We have linked all of the code and everything that we've used to go out and harvest all of the metadata from those journals, and then we sort of extract figure out the languages by looking at the abstracts and using that automated tools, as well as classifier disciplines and all of that stuff. So the idea is that all of that is sort of we're not receiving that information from the journals directly. All we have is the existence of the installation, and then everything else is being done through the open interfaces that are and the open metadata that the platform makes.
Okay, that's pretty much what
It's a little bit, it's a little bit of an arduous process to collect all of that data, but we have made the data set available of all of the installations. That's available in our database, your Dataverse instance, for the data of every PHP installation that we know of. As well as the OAI URL. So if anybody wants to harvest that metadata, there's one place where they can go. We are updating that data set every year with the latest snapshot.
Okay, sounds great.
So Vanessa, please, and I think maybe we have the chat as well. We can have Vanessa first, and then.
Enough, loud enough. Well, Martina, I'm not sure from Germany, she asked, could you share Juan Pablo some data on the usage and growth of their OPS software since 2020 and discover the availability of content publishing using some OPS, yeah.
Yeah, so OPS is a preprint platform that we made available. The largest installation of OPS that's out there in use today is being used by Cielo preprints, but there's another handful of other platforms. We haven't done a study or tracked all of those instances of OPS, although they actually are available in that same data set, which we'll update again for that version. But there are something like around a dozen OPS installations that have content in them that are out there today. There's more installations, but those are the ones that appear to be active. And so again, we see a distribution of small preprint servers and small initiatives, but there's some of them that are larger, like engineering archive. There's one in Japan that I forget the name of, and this yellow one is by far the largest.
Okay, thank you. Vanessa, please.
Sorry, so Juan Pablo again. So it's really great that you've got data on how they're using their JS. So that's really good to see. And you're also talking about how many of us then are relying on these open source tools. So and you kind of very subtly at the end you were talking about funding. I mean, I think it's a huge challenge for open source, open platforms. How to fund themselves, and if you think about how many of us rely on you on this open source platform, how are we ensured that you're going to be here for many years to come? So what are some of the challenges, and also how can the community help you?
Yeah, well, first, you can help us by giving us money to keep doing what it is that we're doing. That's the short version. I think that the reassurance that we try to give the community is that we have been around for 20 years and we are a critical part of the infrastructure. And so in some sense, there's already a dependency that's in place. But we are relying on funding to come from the community to be able to do this. We have large grants from part of the Canadian government and through a project called Publica, it's partnership between PUBMET and NRD, and it's actually creating a Canadian scholarly communication infrastructure, which is both has PUBMET and NRD as sort of the two main systems, and this is largely funded by the Canadian government to have Canadian cyber infrastructure for scholarly publishing, which is one of the diamond OA models around having sort of public funding and support. So this is something that the Canadian government is essentially helping support to give to the rest of the world by creating a Canadian infrastructure that is based on open source software, means that other people can benefit. But we also have other funding streams for the services that we provide. I think in terms of the larger answer to your question, like how do we find these kinds of, how do we overcome this challenge around the fact that open source tools and open infrastructures don't have necessarily a business model behind them. And the whole premise that everything that we see that thousands of diamond OA journals don't have a single business model. They're largely supported through sort of ad hoc efforts and in-kind support from institutions. And it is hard to depend on that for the infrastructure that in turn all of those thousands of journals are relying on. I think when it comes to it, and the reason why I made that sort of one of the theme of my talk today is that we need to make a commitment to supporting these infrastructures and start putting the same kind of public funding or private funding, the same kind of investments that we're trying to see into supporting these infrastructures, right? And I think that at some point we also need to start not picking winners is not really the right term, but also looking at what are going to be effective places to put that money in place. There's been a lot of interest, a lot of hedging in the community to want to support every initiative that's doing quote unquote good work that's philosophically aligned. And I think in those efforts we keep diluting the resources that are available instead of trying to see where we can most effectively put the resources that are in place. So I don't know if it's a very satisfactory answer, and it's a larger conversation. The work of SCOS has been, for example, important in one of those efforts. Some of the work with IOI, investment ownership organization, around thinking around these questions. There isn't very clear cut answer. My answers obviously come biased from the way that I see that PHP has been able to help the community, and the frustration sometimes that comes in seeing supports of the same level of impact, or we ourselves struggle with a small team to try to support 30,000 Germans.
Thank you. And so we have a question, please. Your name and affiliation.
I'm sorry, I would ask about the GoTriple project and find drug evidence that into humanistic sciences. The question would be, would you see a specific problems and what kind of problems to integrate actually into the same type of platform, social sciences, technology, technical sciences, and specifically interdisciplinary research. For example, let's say archaeology, a huge variety of scientific chemistry up to history and so on. So there are some interdisciplinary areas which actually don't fit anywhere. Do you see any specific problems in integrating that? Because that would be really good general scientific approach.
Well, I think I can you're asking more from a technical view or from a conceptual one. As for the conceptual one, I haven't been as quite professional. Using Norris categories, naming 27 disciplines, and these are disciplines we consider social sciences and humanities. This, of course, by no means that there aren't any blurry areas. So I don't think you can completely rule it out. So this is, I guess, something that we really have to live with. And as for technological viewpoint, I actually have to start to maybe go into more detail with the question. And even then, I might not be able to answer completely, but I will be able to get in touch with the right people to answer the question. What is this? Is what you will ask.
It's a very relevant question. I think it's. Okay. Yeah.
That's basically a problem that we need to with our users. Because we feature these disciplines and we feature foundations from these disciplines, but what people do with it is basically another question. Because we cannot decide for researchers which kind of data set or which kind of method they would like to use that they find valuable to their research. So this is very much open to my research.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question from here, please.
Yes, I'm Patricia Alonso-Álvarez from Gdańsk University School of Medicine, and I'm director of the chief of the Diamond Open Access Journal in America. And I just would like to start with some kind of definition to do something to protect small open access diamond journals from abusing the content, from abusing everything that you can. For example, 2 months ago, I just incidentally discovered the web page CN1699 is the Chinese platform which it support online submission system of the biomedical journal. I found there my journal and also by the help of the team of the GoTriple is the portal of the Croatian Certificate and Professional Art Journals. We discovered that there are at least 10 medical journals from Croatia that have fake online submission system on their web page. And also we find that the center provider is Amazon. I get to the discussion with Amazon, and they refuse to investigate what happens. So they just tell me that they are customers that I can discuss with them. And after we include after we invite CART, national CRT. This was the point which after that there are some activities to eliminate the Croatian medical journals. But at the moment, I see that this web page really exists. Fortunately, Croatian journals are not on that platform, but the other medical journals worldwide are on that platform. So please check if you are somewhere there. So there is something that we need to do to support IP protection of small open centers, the language journals.
It's fine. Just briefly, with something that we've been sort of planning within implementing on the S. It's really just more at a concept stage at this point, but we're slowly trying to make inroads. Part of it is we need to get the resources to launch it out on the ground with something that we're referring to as a journal integrity initiative. And part of this idea is to have something, and you kind of think of it as an example where you were calling it a publication facts label, kind of think of it like nutrition labels on food. That's something that you can put on journals. But the idea here is that we'll be able to have not just the information about the journal, that people can have some transparency about what goes on, but also include the linkages. For example, we create the editorial board page and the origin profile of those individuals, so you can kind of create this cross-checking, and when you're on the page, you'll be able to not just see who's on the editorial board, but actually have a link that you can use to go check that that person also lists on their origin profile that they're the editor, and then this is how you have that back and forth sort of not really a two-factor authentication, but it's sort of a validated using the systems that are in place. And the idea is just to create greater transparency, something that the platform itself can show what the editorial process has been, and who are actually the people involved, as a way of trying to sort of address some of the problems and give the community the tools that they need themselves to be able to verify that this is a legitimate journal. They are actually undergoing peer review. These are the real people that are actually confirming that they're involved. And so I think we can put those tools in place. It's something, again, that we're trying to put in place to the tool, and then we can have the adoption and some develop the technologies and drive its adoption. So not quite there yet, but I think it's time to get this as part of that problem, right? Which is so-called predatory journals or journals or clones and all those. I think those can only be addressed through sort of community enforcement mechanisms. We can't try to have a technological only solution, but creating transparency and having a way of being able to do that.
So I think we have one last question here, please.
Hello, my name is Magdalena from Social Science Data Archive, which is a service provider for SESSION. So I have a question for Magdalena about bridging of knowledge platform. So you said you are also receiving research data in that platform and publishing it. And you're also dealing with the data management planning. My question is about disciplinary approach. So I suppose you're covering all scientific areas, and I'm wondering how you deal with this disciplinary specifics. It's very often my special interest data.
Thank you for your question. Yes, we provide interdisciplinary support. However, we have data stewards which are specialized in a bunch of disciplines. For example, I provide training and support for data monitoring stewards for technical and engineering disciplines, and also we have stewards who deal with biology and chemistry, data management plans. And when we started to build our repositories, we knew that that would be a little bit problem because we need to combine everything, and also we had to combine a lot of different disciplines. Also in our project to develop open source data repository, we have two partners, University of Gdańsk, which represent more humanities disciplines as well, and also Gdańsk Medical University, where we do medical data. So Anna, she was the scientific coordinator of the project, and she established a group of researchers from almost all the disciplines, and we get feedback, and we got feedback from them, we got consultation from them, and one of our great achievements, I think, is that we adjust our metadata schema based on data type, but we adjust it to different disciplines. We put another attributes, for example, for people who conduct medical research, to provide information about ethical papers and so on. So again, collaboration with different disciplines and with different researchers.
That's a good note to stop. Thank you for the questions, and let's give a big hand to the panel.